There's a conversation women don't have publicly. Not in podcasts, not on panels, not even in therapy. But it exists in the pauses between their sentences, in the uneasy laughs, in the confessions they make to their closest friends. It's the conversation about the kind of man that can't quite explain. The man who doesn't bend, doesn't beg, doesn't break under emotional pressure. The man who sees through them, and that seeing makes them uneasy. This isn't the fear of danger or abuse. It's something older, quieter, more psychological. Carl Jung would have called it the fear of the integrated masculine, a man who has confronted his own darkness and emerged self-contained. He's not running from his emotions, but he's not ruled by them either. He's met his shadow, shaken hands with it, and that handshake gave him freedom. And that freedom, that internal authority, is what women can't control. Jung believed that what we fear in others is often what we've repressed within ourselves. So when a woman meets a man who has faced his chaos, it forces her to face hers. He's not performing masculinity, he's embodying it. He doesn't use strength to dominate, but to remain unmoved. That steadiness exposes her volatility. His calm confronts her chaos. And suddenly she's not sure whether she's falling in love or losing control. You can see it happen. The teasings stop being playful. The tests stop being cute. She says, "You're so hard to read." And he smiles because he knows she's not talking about mystery. She's talking about power. Not physical power, but psychological power. The kind that comes from not needing her approval to feel whole. Carl Jung wrote that the meeting of two souls is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation requires surrender. And surrender terrifies the ego, especially the female ego that's been taught to measure safety by control. When she realizes she can't predict him, can't steer his emotions, can't make him chase, her instincts don't read it as peace. They read it as danger, because she's not in charge of the narrative anymore. This is the paradox Jung warned about, that what draws women to strong men is the same thing that unsettles them, his inner independence. She doesn't fear his dominance, she fears his detachment, the quiet way he can care deeply and still walk away if respect disappears, the terrifying truth that his world won't collapse without her. That's not cruelty, that's sovereignty, and it's the rarest trait a modern man can have. Carl Jung believed that every woman carries within her an unconscious image of the masculine, an archetype he called the animus. It's the inner man she argues with, dreams about, and secretly measures every lover against. And when she meets a man who resembles that archetype, something powerful happens. Her unconscious awakens. She doesn't just see him, she feels him as if he's a part of her she's been waiting to meet. But here's the paradox Jung uncovered. The man who activates her deepest attraction also triggers her deepest fear. Why? Because he isn't just another person. He's a mirror of her inner world, her repressed desires, her untamed ambition, her silent rage, her hidden wisdom. When a woman encounters a man who embodies her own denied qualities, she experiences him as both magnetic and dangerous. He awakens her, but he also exposes her. Jung wrote that we don't fall in love with people, we fall in love with the images we project onto them. And the more powerful the projection, the more terrifying the realization that we never truly knew them, only the reflection of what we wanted them to be. So when she meets a man who doesn't accept her projection, who refuses to play the role her unconscious has scripted, the savior, the boy, the rebel, the romantic ideal, he becomes psychologically untouchable. He's not feeding her fantasy, he's confronting it. He's not a mirror, he's a window. And through that window, Jung believed that true relationships begin only after projections collapse. When you stop loving the idea of someone and start seeing the person. But most women, like most men, panic when that collapse happens. It feels like loss,
like disillusionment, when in truth, it's the beginning of real love. And for women especially, it's the moment of truth. Can she love a man she can't control? Can she handle intimacy without ownership? The type of man Jung described, the individuated, self-contained man, doesn't exist to complete her story. He's living his own. That's what terrifies her most, because if he can exist fully without her, then she has to face the parts of herself that can't exist without someone else. That's the spiritual discomfort Jung spent his life writing about, the tension between dependence and wholeness, between projection and truth. When a woman meets a man who no longer dances for validation, she's confronted with a rare mirror, one that doesn't flatter, doesn't distort, doesn't bend to please. And in that mirror, she finally sees what she's been running from, her own unfinished self. Carl Jung wrote that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Most people run from their shadow, but the rare man Jung spoke of, the one who terrifies women, doesn't. He confronts it. He doesn't hide from his anger, his lust, his ambition, or his pain. He brings them into awareness, integrates them, and in doing so, becomes whole. That's what makes him powerful. Not perfection, but integration. And that's what women feel when they meet him. Not charm, not charisma, but an energy that's grounded, self-contained, unshakable. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world trained you to be. Most men suppress their shadow to appear safe or good. They smile too much, explain too much, apologize too often. They trade authenticity for acceptance. But this man doesn't perform goodness. He understands that a man who denies his darkness will be ruled by it. He's done pretending. He's disciplined his instincts instead of denying them. That's why he moves differently, quiet, certain, deliberate. To the untrained eye, that calm looks like coldness, but to the intuitive woman, it feels like danger. Not because he'll hurt her, but because he could and chooses not to. That awareness of his own strength, that conscious restraint, radiates a kind of masculine gravity that modern culture can't manufacture. He doesn't need to dominate anyone because he's already mastered himself. That self-possession triggers something ancient in women, an instinctive respect mixed with an unexplainable fear. Jung believed that the feminine psyche recognizes shadow integration before the conscious mind does. That's why some women say things like, "There's something about him I can't explain." What they're feeling is his completeness, the balance of light and dark, reason, instinct, love and danger. He's not compartmentalized, he's unified. And that unity reminds her of what she's lost in herself, the connection to her own instinctual nature. You see, women aren't terrified of a man's darkness. They're terrified of what it awakens in theirs. A man who's made peace with his shadow holds a mirror to the part of her that's still pretending. He exposes her masks without even trying. His presence makes her question her filtered smile, her social persona, her controlled emotions. She starts to see how much of her femininity was curated to survive, not to express. And that realization feels like exposure. That's why women test men like this. It's not about drama, it's about safety. She needs to know if his calm is real or just a disguise. Because if it's real, she's standing before something rare. A man who can't be shaken by her storms. A man who doesn't need to win arguments, because he's already won. Freedom, in its purest form, is terrifying to those who haven't earned it. A man who has individuated, who no longer seeks permission to exist, radiates a kind of autonomy that the world doesn't know how to process. For women, that autonomy can feel both magnetic and disorienting. He doesn't orbit her emotions. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He isn't performing strength or pretending to be emotionally unavailable. He is emotionally sovereign. He moves through the world like someone who has built his own gravity, and that gravity pulls at her instincts. She wants to be near it, but she also wants to understand it, to decode it, name it, own it. But the moment she tries, it slips through her fingers, because what she's really chasing isn't him, it's the feeling he evokes. Presence without dependence, affection without need, masculinity without performance. Jung believed that the self, once discovered, becomes unshakable. Such a man can't be possessed because he no longer possesses himself in pieces. He's whole. That wholeness unnerves women who've been taught that love means merging, blending, dissolving. Because this man doesn't merge, he meets. He doesn't